Part 3, because apparently the previous 14 movies weren't enough for us. The formula's still the same. Sex, zero budget, and pure 70s insanity. But this time, it's all wrapped in American horror. Vampires in the desert, psychosexual nightmares, and a grown man in the baby crib. And that's when you have to ask, where does horror end and exploitation begin? Pour yourself something strong. It doesn't get any better from here. The Incredible Melting Man. If you were a drive-in theater owner in the late 70s, you knew your audience wanted simple pleasures: cheap air conditioning, a cold drink, and a monster whose face slowly slides off his skull over 90 minutes. Director William Sachs delivered exactly that in 1977. The story kicks off with astronaut Steve West returning from a space mission where he gazed directly at Saturn's rings through an unfiltered window. Cosmic rays turn his body into a walking biohazard, causing his skin and muscle tissue to liquefy into warm yellow gelatin. After breaking out of a military hospital, Steve discovers that eating fresh human flesh temporarily slows down his cellular decay. Driven by pure survival instinct, he goes on a gooey, rampaging spree across the California countryside, ambushing hikers, suburban couples, and security guards. What gives the movie its cult status is the practical makeup by a young Rick Baker long before his Oscars. Baker went all in with liquid latex, corn syrup, and fake blood, serving up extended close-ups of ears peeling away like wet wallpaper, and a severed head floating down a waterfall that shatters on impact. The movie bounces between body horror and an unintended comedy, including a clumsy fifth fight with a power plant night watchman. By the climax, Steve has dissolved so thoroughly that a janitor literally sweeps him up with a broom and a bucket. It's messy, cheap, and captures that golden age where practical effects reign supreme. Number 6. Sugar Cookies, 1973. In 1973, writer-director Theodore Gershuni teamed up with producer Lloyd Kaufman, years before Kaufman founded Troma, to create a cold, uncomfortable psychological thriller called Sugar Cookies. The horror here doesn't come from monsters or masked killers, but from human sleaze and manipulation set in New York's underground film scene. The plot centers on Max, a sociopathic producer who drives his leading lady to suicide while filming a graphic adult scene. Showing zero remorse, he quickly finds Julie, a young woman who looks identical to the dead actress. Max hatches a sick plan: groom and break Julie down until she completely adopts the dead girl's identity so he can finish his film. Enter Camila, played by Warhol icon Mary Warrenoff. As the dead girl's secret lover, Camila sees right through Max. Instead of calling the police, she initiates an intense, highly erotic partnership with Julie, training her to become the ultimate trap for Max to destroy him from within. Shot with a slick, cold aesthetic, the film sits right between art-house thriller and softcore exploitation. It's filled with psychological mind games and an overwhelming sense of paranoia, where no character is clean and everyone uses each other for sex, money, or revenge. Number 5. The Velvet Vampire, 1971. While most vampire movies stick to foggy European villages and damp stone cellars, director Stephanie Rothman dragged the archetype kicking and screaming into the scorching, sun-drenched landscape of the Mojave Desert. Produced under Roger Corman's legendary exploitation banner, The Velvet Vampire is easily one of the most stylish and unusual bloodsucker pictures to emerge from the early 70s. The story centers on Diana Lafanu, an ancient vampire who has completely abandoned traditional Gothic tropes. She doesn't hide in a dusty coffin or lurk in dark alleys. Instead, she lives in an ultra-modern desert estate, drives around in a dune buggy, and wears wide-brimmed sun hats and heavy sunglasses to manage the daytime glare. After scouting a young, open-minded Los Angeles couple at a city art gallery, Diana casually invites them out to her secluded retreat for a weekend getaway. What begins as an invitation to an avant-garde bohemian lifestyle quickly morphs into a slow-burning psychosexual trap.
Diana effortlessly seduces both the husband and the wife, weaving a web of hallucinatory dreams, three-way encounters, and sudden bursts of bloody violence. As one of the extremely rare women directing exploitation cinema at the time, Rothman brought a distinctly different sensibility to the material, prioritizing mood and psychological tension over cheap jump scares. Under her direction, the vast, empty desert feels just as claustrophobic and inescapable as any medieval dungeon. Packed with soft-focus photography, surreal nightmare sequences featuring rattlesnakes and blood-stained sand, and a heavy 70s rock soundtrack, it's a prime example of low-budget drive-in cinema delivering genuine artistic ambition alongside its promised sleaze.
Number 4. Count Yorga, Vampire, 1970. While The Velvet Vampire was busy sunbathing in the desert, director Bob Keljan was proving that classic Gothic horror could thrive inside the concrete suburban sprawl of modern-day Los Angeles. Count Yorga Vampire actually started production as a soft-core adult flick, but lead actor Robert Quarry read the script and convinced the producers that it would make far more money as a straight horror film, a gamble that paid off massive dividends at the box office. Quarry plays the Count with pure, arrogant condescension. He doesn't skulk around in the shadows. He stands in well-lit living rooms wearing an opera cape, politely sipping wine while casually sizing up the necks of his guests, before turning vicious the moment the lights drop. When the boyfriend of one victim realizes what's happening, he discovers that neither local doctors nor the police are remotely equipped to deal with an ancient warlord operating out of a suburban neighborhood. Shot on a shoestring budget over just a few weekends, the film moves fast, packs a surprisingly mean punch, and effectively revitalized the vampire subgenre with a nasty modern edge right at the start of the decade.
Number 3. The Baby, 1973. If you walked into a drive-in theater in 1973 expecting a standard creature feature or slasher flick, nothing in the world could have prepared you for The Baby. Directed by veteran TV filmmaker Ted Post, this isn't a movie about ghosts, vampires, or masked killers. It's a deeply perverted, deeply wrong domestic nightmare that feels like a daytime TV soap opera written by someone suffering from severe heat stroke. The story follows an earnest, well-meaning social worker named Anne, who takes on a new case file involving the eccentric Wadsworth family. The household consists of an overbearing, domineering matriarch, her two aggressive adult daughters, and the youngest child, simply known as Baby. The catch? Baby is a fully grown 21-year-old man. Baby cannot walk or speak, sleeps in an oversized wooden crib, wears giant diapers, and drinks from a bottle. His mother and sisters treat him like an infant, keeping him locked in a nursery and zapping him with cattle prods whenever he tries to stand up or make adult noises. Their official excuse is a childhood trauma, but as Anne digs deeper, she realizes the mother is intentionally keeping him mentally and physically handicapped to keep collecting his deceased father's massive disability checks. Anne decides she has to rescue Baby from this horrific situation, but the Wadsworth women are willing to commit murder to keep their human doll. Watching adult actors interact with a full-grown man in a crib, rattling toys at him, powdering his rear, and feeding him baby food creates a level of psychological discomfort that almost no traditional horror movie can match. It's absurd, deeply creepy, and just when you think you've figured out where the story's headed, the final 10 minutes hit you with a plot twist so jaw-droppingly wrong, it leaves most viewers staring at the screen in complete disbelief.
Number 2. The Witch Who Came from the Sea, 1976. In 1976, director Matt Cimber delivered a film that on paper looked like a standard supernatural drive-in flick. The Witch Who Came from the Sea. But anyone expecting a light-hearted monster movie was in for a brutal awakening. This is one of the most raw, deeply disturbing psychosexual character studies of 70s exploitation cinema. The story centers on Millie, played in a powerhouse performance by Millie Perkins, who, in a bizarre bit of casting trivia, had played Anne Frank nearly 2 decades earlier. Here, she plays a quiet, lonely barmaid living in a sunlit beach town in California. On the surface, Millie seems harmless. She hangs out at the local pub, talks to sailors, and obsesses over television commercials featuring muscular, shirtless athletes. Underneath that placid exterior, however, Millie's harboring immense, unresolved childhood trauma involving her abusive father. As the heat rises and her mental stability completely disintegrates, her childhood memories merge with violent, sexual hallucinations. She begins picking up muscular men on the beach, luring them back to her room or onto yachts, and subjecting them to horrific violence, most notoriously involving a razor blade. What makes the movie so effective as horror is how director Matt Cimber shoots it. The line between reality and Millie's fractured mind completely vanishes. Quiet, mundane conversations suddenly snap into terrifying, surreal nightmare sequences filled with strange synthesizer scores, neon lights, and ocean imagery. It's an incredibly unpleasant, deeply tragic, and deeply weird film that pushed the boundaries of Grindhouse cinema so far it ended up officially banned in the UK during the video nasty hysteria of the 1980s.
Number 1. The Toolbox Murders, 1978. By the late 1970s, the slasher genre was beginning to take shape. But before Halloween established the clean, theatrical style of cinematic suspense, director Dennis Donnelly unleashed The Toolbox Murders, a film that took the home invasion concept and dragged it through pure, unadulterated grindhouse filth. The premise is stripped down to absolute brutal simplicity. Inside a sprawling, somewhat run-down apartment complex in Los Angeles, tenants are systematically stalked, terrorized, and slaughtered by a man wearing a black ski mask. He doesn't carry a fantasy weapon or a butcher knife. He walks from apartment to apartment carrying a heavy-duty red metal toolbox. Whatever tool he pulls out, claw hammers, hand drills, screwdrivers, wood chisels, or nail guns, becomes the murder weapon for the next scene. The film makes zero attempt to be subtle or classy. The first 30 minutes are essentially an uninterrupted gauntlet of intense, relentless violence targeted almost exclusively at female tenants, accompanied by a booming, uncomfortable country music soundtrack and sleazy, low-budget visuals. Midway through, veteran character actor Cameron Mitchell enters the picture, delivering an unhinged, rambling performance that elevates the movie from a simple killer flick into something far more chaotic and bizarre. Shot fast, cheap, and nasty, it stands as a stark reminder of just how mean and unrestrained American exploitation horror could get right before the big studios took over the genre in the 80s.
Looking back at these 7 films, you have to admire the sheer, unfiltered nerve of American low-budget cinema in the 1970s. Filmmakers didn't have focus groups, studio executives, or corporate sponsors telling them what was acceptable. If an idea was strange, provocative, or completely tasteless, they loaded the camera and shot it anyway. Which one of these movies do you think went too far? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to keep digging into the weirdest, most obscure corners of film history, hit the like button and subscribe to the Raw Archive. See you in the next one.